This is Sunbelt Commissioner Keith Gill, and I listen to the Funbelt Podcast.
This is the Funbelt Podcast, part of the Believe Network.
Hosts the Dusty Thibodeau of Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper of Howl Razor, and Shane Metlin of the Daily News Record.
I think it's potentially a very good week for the Sunbelt.
But I'm just kind of going off on a random rant. It's just frustrating. It's
Gentlemen.
Jeremy.
Yes.
We're back after a week off.
We had reasons we could not record.
Life be lifing.
But
not to mention, we had to take a week off, for Shane, because I think that, he got some devastating news that he just was unable to cope with, that being that Marshall got their first win of the season.
Yeah, he can't stand it when Marshall wins.
Where did this come from?
You told us that in the group text.
That's right. Yeah.
I love our friends to the west here.
Don't make us publish those texts.
It was practically in West Virginia here.
What? You like West Virginia?
Oh, wow. That's a new revelation. Shane, more of an ACC guy than a...
What conference?
They're probably a Pac-2 by now.
Wait, are they in the Big Ten? I don't know. West Virginia? I don't even know who's in who anymore.
The Big Sky.
I have fondness in my heart for Tudor's Biscuit World. I have nothing against the Herd.
I heard otherwise. Guys, how is it, though, since we're back after a week off? We had a bye week.
Yeah, we took the bye week. It was kind of unexpected. I had some... What?
You guys you're lumping me in here. You guys don't play hurt. You don't fight through it. You don't throw any dirt on it.
I had things happen, and then Tibbs was sick. If Tibbs is sick, none of us goes. Yeah,
my agent said that I don't have to play hurt, Shane.
It's in the contract. You got to read the fine print.
Yeah, some of us are willing to tough it out, but
Tibbs, why don't you tell us what's going on with soccer? I know you want to. I know you want to talk about soccer so bad.
The real football, Jeremy. That's what we started this podcast to talk about, was Sunbelt women's soccer.
Okay.
It's pure anarchy, and I love it. Only 2 wins in Sunbelt, with South Alabama, Georgia State getting the win. Everyone else tied, except for the Raging Cajuns and Southern Miss. They were the victims of the loss. But for the most part, it's a wide open race, and I'd love to see that everybody gets a point.
Yeah, I think we're talking about what our thoughts were on this sort of tying system. And let me tell you something. Here's my thought on that. If you have a system where where the goal is just not to lose, the goal isn't to win, it's just not to lose. That is a system that spells nothing but trouble for the sport. It makes it boring. It makes people risk adverse. It makes it to where the fans have to settle for an unsatisfying result. Win or lose. It's a very definitive line. But to go away with a tie, I mean, that's like, to me, that's like eating a bag of Sun Chips, completely without any satisfaction at all.
Well, we know another person that will not be sponsoring us anytime soon.
Sun Chips can go to hell, Tibbs.
I love Sun Chips. I'm not
Sun
just
Chips, official chip of the Sun Belt.
Not just sucking up to get a sponsor. I genuinely love Sun Chips.
Sun Chips can kiss my ass. Every time I see Sun Chips in my box lunch, like when somebody does that thing where you go in a meeting and it's a box lunch meeting and you have a choice between the chicken salad or the turkey club or the other thing, and then you open the box and inside there's not a delicious bag of Fritos or a great bag of Ruffles, but it's damn Sun Chips. It's the worst.
Here.
Yuck. It's a phony chip.
Save them for me. The original are the best too. The cheddar ones are okay. The originals.
They come in so many flavors, and they have to because they know that the original chip, it's based off a lie. It's a chip of lies. There's nothing sunny about these chips.
There is something sunny though, Jeremy.
Okay. All right.
We finally got a big Sunbelt marquee win this past week with Old Dominion breaking out the whooping stick on Virginia Tech. So much so that Pry is no longer leading the Turkeys.
I think we kind of thought that this could happen, right? We knew that one, Old Dominion's weird, and they've got this great quarterback in Colton Joseph. And two, Virginia Tech isn't that great. And I just love it when a Sunbelt team beats a team so bad that the immediate reaction is to fire the coach. That's my favorite thing.
Well, I don't like about that now that it's happened 2 years in a row. Not only getting the coach fired, but also we don't get to see the reaction at the end of these games on the ACC network, because when the ACC team's getting beat that bad, they leave with 2 or 3 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter to show pregame of, Stanford, Pitt, or whoever it happened to be playing. Like, because everybody's got to get their pregame fix of that. You don't want to see these ODU kids celebrate or what Ricky Ronnie's doing on the sideline, because it might embarrass the conference that you're paying for this network.
Yeah,
that's pissed me off 2 years in a row. And I wasn't even watching the JMU North Carolina game because I was there. But you sign up to show a game, you show all 4 quarters.
That's right. And you got to be a good sport about it.
Yeah.
And if your team loses, you got to give credit due to the team that wins, right?
Not to mention the announcers, the ACC announcers in that Virginia Tech ODU game. I don't know how many times in the first half it was like such a shocking result, such a shocking development. I was like, okay, maybe that's 28-0, but if you didn't think ODU could win that game, were you paying any attention? Did you do any prep at all? Shocking to who?
So I've been kind of checking in to see who are some of the lead candidates for the West Virginia job. I keep calling it West Virginia. I'm sorry, the Virginia Tech job. And I've heard our good friend Jamie Chadwell's name mentioned, which I thought was kind of funny considering he's having a little bit of trouble right now at Liberty. And I've heard another familiar name, Shane Metlin, Bob Chesney in the mix. What do you think of that?
He's speechless.
I'm back. I think those names are obviously going to get mentioned when you've got successful G5 coaches in the same state. Chesney, I think it's wait and see on Chesney.
Yeah.
Like what happens, like what jobs, whether he does well enough this year to warrant getting the job to move on. And if he does, like which ones are most appealing to him. Never ever would have guessed Kurt Signetti was heading to Indiana.
No.
Even though, we were wondering where he was going to end up a couple of years ago. Indiana was not really on the radar. People are talking about West Virginia, which I think that was misguided. But, talking about a lot of different places, Indiana never showed up on there. So I think it's a little early to start pegging any of these guys for Virginia Tech. But, it's definitely a possibility. The thing about Jimmy Chadwell is I think he might be making more at Liberty right now than Brent Pry was making at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, no kidding. Also another name I've heard spring up for that Virginia Tech job has been Kurt Signetti. And I'm like, why would Kurt Signetti leave a Big Ten job that he's got into the top 25 and go to the shit show that is Virginia Tech in a conference that's going extinct?
Here's the thing. I don't think we know during the process what jobs are good. Because like I said, you never would have guessed Indiana for Signetti. And then it's after he's hired that we find out, they've really upped their game. They're cranking money into their NIL. They're building facilities. They're giving him everything he wants. And you didn't think of Indiana as a school that would do that. Virginia Tech they're admitting they're behind
Yeah.
the eight ball as far financially. They've gone to the Board of Visitors here in Virginia and said, we've got to spend more money. We've got to spend money like Clemson. So the question for this coaching search is if they're going to do it or not. If they spend like they did to hire Brent Pry, they're not going to get anybody like Signetti. They may get somebody like a Bob Chesney who's not making that much money, and it would be a huge step up. But we don't really know what kind of job these places are until kind of after the search is done. And then they start telling us, oh, we've got this much for NIL. We've got this much for a new facility. We've got, this much for our assistant pool. You never would have guessed Indiana was in that boat, but their boosters got serious about it. And, maybe Virginia Tech will too.
Yeah. And you look at it, who knew that UCLA was such a shit show that they fired their coach after another big loss? And, everyone talks about there's no NIL, there's no facilities. You're kind of overshadowed by USC, by the Dodgers, by everything in between. I would have thought and assumed that, UCLA in the NEC or whatever conference they're in, we'll just start making up conferences now whenever we don't know, which is pretty frequent. But you would have thought that this is a huge, historic, predominant college football team, and nothing.
Yeah. Tibbs, pull us back into the Sun Belt.
No.
Pull us back in.
I mean, it's worth talking about because these jobs are opening. And I mean, let's be honest, like Sun Belt coaches are going to get looked at for every opening. And
you think they're going to get looked at by UCLA?
You never know.
Wait.
Or what if UCLA pulls somebody from,
the domino effect. Huh?
Or, I mean, Clay Helton wound up being the coach at USC and Georgia Southern. So, I mean, it can happen.
So the mayor of New Iberia, Dave Schultz, is right then that the mayor of New Iberia, Mike Desimo, is headed out west to UCLA.
Did he make that prediction?
No, he came out talking about that there's Cajun fans wanting Dez ousted because they got blown out at Missouri. But I mean, hell, we saw it 2 weeks ago. The SEC is still the SEC, and if they want to go out and just dominate teams, they're going to do it. I mean, 73-0 over ULM. What was it, 52-10 of Missouri and the Ahmad Hardy show over the Cajuns?
Yeah.
It is what it is. I don't take too much stock in there to say, woe is us, we're terrible, we're horrible, and everything else. I mean, you look at it there, Jeremy, are you willing and ready to get rid of Butch Jones and implode the program so that you can rebuild it to its glory after you lost by, 8 to a top-ranked or a top 25 Iowa State team?
Now, is this question was pretty meandering, but it was complex and rich with detail. And I got a little lost, but are you saying that in reference to the calls for Mike D to be fired and replaced?
No, I was asking about Coastal Carolina getting shut out there, Jeremy.
Well, I think there's a difference between Coach Mike D. I won't even attempt to say his last name for fear of getting killed by the Cajuns Mafia. I think there's a difference between Coach D and Coach Beck. All right. And Shane has hinted at this a couple episodes previously that Coastal Carolina, their offense really petered out last season. And to fix it, they hire a new offensive coordinator. They don't fire Tim Beck. That's always, by the way, that's always the first sign of trouble, right? When you're forced to get rid of your offensive coordinator and hire a new one, or it's your job. That's kind of where Coastal Carolina is right now. They got rid of the offensive coordinator. Now there's no one else left but to get rid of Tim Beck. And that tell you that job he did, what was it? Who was the opponent? It was East Carolina. God. A regional rival like the Pirates. You don't score a single point on them. Somebody's got to go, and that's not where Coach D is. Coach D is coming off a season where he wins the West, and he had like every Sun Belt team that has success. You get punished for that success by having all your players go away. This is not Tim Beck's team. Tim Beck's team should be at a much better place this deep into his tenure, and it is not. Somebody asked me, maybe it was you, Tibbs, if Coastal Carolina is bad. Coastal Carolina is bad.
Yeah, it's rough. And I saw this pointed out too, like the other day, that they kind of went through a cycle of quarterbacks. They're still going through a cycle of quarterbacks. They apparently didn't get along last year, like Beck and the offensive staff. So that's why he makes the change at offensive coordinator. They had Noah Kim on the roster, who was pretty decent at Michigan State, and now is pretty decent at Eastern Michigan, but never really got on the field much at Coastal. Like, it's really like, what is going on there? Why can't they figure it? I mean, it just seems like it's a total mess on the offensive side of the ball right now.
Yeah, and
last year too.
Yeah, and Beck at the post-game conference just looked defeated. He's like, I have no answers.
Yeah,
so I don't know. Coastal Carolina, they're just one of those programs that are small but proud, and I don't see them taking that for too much longer.
Jeremy, do you want me to ask another meandering question?
Yeah, and I hope it's just as challenging as the last.
Georgia State on the board, getting their win over their FCS opponent there, Murray State, who was in the College Baseball World Series.
That's right.
Against Coastal Carolina. See, I'm tying it all together there, Jeremy.
Wow. It's all falling neatly into place.
Out of these games, though, really only one game really mattered, and that was, of course, Southern Miss topping the Mountaineers 38-22. It included a 99-yard pick six for the Golden Eagles. Is this finally that we're getting to see the hype around Huff, the hype around the players he brought in with him, and is Southern Miss back? Two questions there.
All right. So here's how I look at it. And Shane, you can drill down deep into what it really means. But first of all, I think one, it says that maybe Appalachian State isn't quite there. We saw that in week 2 against their not so well known FCS opponent, where they didn't look very good in that win. And then we see it against Southern Miss, where clearly Appalachian State is not the same as it used to be. And I believe AJ Swan got hurt in that game too, so there might be something to do with that. But I don't think Appalachian State is all the way back yet. And I do think this says that I think when Southern Miss kind of laid that egg to Mississippi State at home, we were like, okay, well, maybe this is still that 1-11 team from last year. I think when you add Braylon Braxton to the mix, he is legitimately a game-changing quarterback there. And I really think, combined with some defensive guys that they have on this team, they had one guy had like 3 sacks last against Appalachian State. That mix of defense and offense for Charlie Huff in Hattiesburg is pretty damn good. And you probably should, especially if you're a denizen of the West, you probably should be a little bit worried about seeing Southern Miss darken your door.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head, like that App State.
Yes.
So they're a work in progress. And that makes sense 3 games into a new staff. Like when you're going away from what you had for a long time, with not just Sean Clark, but just kind of like the App State guy there for so long. Yeah, so App State, I'm not extremely worried about their long-term future yet, just because they lost this game. At least they're not Charlotte, who they beat the doors off of, in week 1. So, you got the leg up in the in-state battle there. And, Charlie Huff, another Sunbelt name that's gotten a little bit of mention for that Virginia Tech job already, too.
I haven't heard that, but that makes a lot of sense.
That's a name that's popped up on some lists, and, whether that's all speculation or not, who knows? But, I think they're solid. And I was down. I'll be honest. I hate to admit this. I didn't want to admit that the middle and bottom tier of the SEC was really that good. I thought, a lot of SEC teams are probably overrated, but Mississippi State is pretty good. Arkansas is pretty good.
They're pretty good. Yeah.
I was down on this Southern Miss and Arkansas State for losing those games so badly to what I deemed not that great SEC teams.
Yeah,
they're pretty good.
They're pretty.
They both of those teams have shown since that.
Oh,
both of those teams. What happened?
It's froze there. It said both those teams have shown, and we're like on pins and needles waiting to see what they showed.
Yeah, both of those teams, Arkansas State and Southern Miss, both showed this week they're better than I gave them credit for because I didn't value getting blown out by the SEC.
Oh, that's awfully nice of you to say that, Shane.
So, guys, we talked about last week 3.
Yeah.
But people slide in the DMs, drop me text, emails saying, where's our second short? I can't bet the games this week. I mean, not to say I think that we're giving great betting advice, but they're at least saying, hey, these jackasses pick this team. I'm not going to pick that team. So, it is what it is. So that means, Jeremy, we have to.
we have to do second and short. Is that right?
There you go.
I wasn't quite sure if I hit the cue. You heard the gong, of course. Guys, you know how second and short works. Second and short works this way. We discuss each game. We try to keep it under 2 minutes. If the game involves a Sunbelt West team, we lead with Tibbs. If it involves a Sunbelt East team, we lead with Shane Metlin. And like I said, we try to keep it under 2 minutes. That's why it's called second and short. And guys, are you ready for week 4 of second and short?
Yay!
Never the enthusiasm that I want. But you know what? The music bed helps. The gong helps. It sort of, it makes up for your lack of enthusiasm. We're just going to go ahead and plow through it. And we're going to start with the James Madison Dukes and the Liberty Flames at 2-3 p.m. Saturday, September 20th. It's on ESPNU. Listen, the Dukes are almost a 10-point favorite in this game. And why not? The Flames have lost 2 straight to less than marquee programs like Jack State and Bowling Green. Everybody seems to be a little irritated with Jamie Chadwell, and he's also openly linked to possibly taking over this Virginia Tech gig. We'll start with Shane Metlin. What are we going to see out of this game and the James Madison Dukes, who had a week off?
I mean, honestly, if they don't cover that, 10 whatever point spread, I think it's a pretty big disappointment. They should be able to run the ball at will on the Flames, who haven't been able to stop the run, who struggled, who may come out a little bit desperate, but I just think this year JMU is better than Liberty, and it's a road game. JMU struggled on the road a little bit, maybe the only hesitation there. But it's going to be one of those road games where there's a lot of purple in the stands, and they've done pretty well in those circumstances. I think they've got to focus on the run game. They've got to get the ball to their running backs, and when they're focusing on the run game, not rely too much on Sluka. But if they do, they should win this one relatively easily.
Thibodeau, I think I read somewhere that the James Madison Dukes have lost 4 of their last 5 road games. I don't know if that's a fact for sure, but should this game being played at Liberty, should that concern JMU fans?
No, because like Shane said, I think it's going to be a de facto home game for James Madison.
Nice.
I think that the hatred for Chadwell, the hatred for Liberty really is the big driver. As Shane said, though, they've got to get that running attack going. They've got to be able to hand it off to the backs. Sluka is a great quarterback, but I feel like everyone's going to key on that passing game, expecting it. So that run game is going to be the big difference and the key for the Dukes to be able to pull the game off.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Mads deepens Chadwell's urge to call the U-Haul and maybe take that Virginia Tech in if it's offered to him. I don't know. I feel like Liberty looks pretty bad right now. At the same time, I guess we got a 2-for-1 special, guys, on MAC opponents at 2:30, because at that same time, the Louisiana Raging Cajuns takes on Eastern Michigan Eagles, 2:30 p.m. Like I said, it's on ESPN Plus. The Cajuns are kind of given this sort of half-hearted 2.5 points. Although Eastern Michigan, I think they're 0-3, and my God, they lost to Long Island. I don't know of any team that has ever lost to Long Island. Thibodeau, are the Cajuns going to right this ship anytime soon?
If they're going to, this is the game to. But they have some serious offensive woes.
Yes.
Starting at quarterback. Obviously, bad quarterback play means bad receiving play. It makes them one-dimensional to where they can only try to run the ball. We hadn't even seen Davis being able to do that.
Yeah.
This is definitely a get-right game, but going on the road is just always tough there, Jeremy, especially when you got to play on the concrete field of Eastern Michigan.
So
you know, they have the sledgehammers taking the field, busting down the cinder blocks.
Yeah.
I'd like for the Cajuns to be able to get the win just for the Sun Belt over the MAC, but man, I just don't know if I see it in this game.
Shane, if I were to ask you who ranks dead last in total offense in the Sun Belt, who would you think it is?
I'm going to guess the Cajuns just because they've gotten pretty much no passing game at all this year.
You would be absolutely correct. Shane, do the Cajuns have is their offense so bad that they don't even deserve these 2.5 points?
I'm worried about this one for the Cajuns. Like, even though Eastern Michigan is 0-3, even though they lost to Long Island, I don't know what happened in that one. Like, they didn't look that bad in their other losses to some pretty good teams in Texas State and Kentucky. Like, and like I mentioned earlier, Noah Kim has been pretty solid at quarterback for them, where the Cajuns are trying to figure out what to do post Walker Howard injury. They don't know what to do at quarterback position and haven't been able to throw the ball at all. Like, I think they're running into a team that's really looking for a win, that's going to be desperate and playing at home. And yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence in Louisiana this week.
Yeah, you know, you kind of thought that the Cajuns had a pretty good defense, and I don't know. was Ahmad Hardy? Did he run for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns? Was that the final tally against the Cajuns defense?
Yeah, and it was kind of funny. I saw a highlight package where the first one he's dancing, and the second one he's dancing. They were like, and then he gets his third. I guess he's just tired because he just basically walked off the field after he scored.
Embarrassed for the Cajuns. I think maybe the Cajuns pull this off. I don't know why I believe that. Maybe it was the way Texas State just totally destroyed Eastern Michigan earlier. I don't know. That might color my judgment. All right, you know, it's like. Oh, wait. Here's the second MAC game. I don't know what I was thinking. Troy Trojans at Buffalo Bills. Bills. Oh, my God. Guys, should we just end this show now?
I'm picking the Bills. Just saying.
They're not playing the Bills. They're playing the Bulls. 2:30 p.m. ESPN Plus. The second MAC game the Sun Belt takes on at 2:30. Troy is a 6.5 point dog here. And maybe so. You know, I think everybody was high on the Trojans when they took Clemson to task. Then we saw that Clemson maybe isn't very good. And now they no longer have Goose Crowder. They're playing Tucker Kilcrease. And he went 10 for 29 for 65 yards and an interception last week. That's not very good, Dusty Thibodeau.
Yeah, and going to Buffalo, you know, it's one of those places where it's tough to get to. And when you get there, it's just kind of the weird environment, kind of the quiet type of environment there. I once again, I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to have some Sunbelt victories, but I think the Maction just gets a little bit better this week, beating the Sunbelt and Troy Trojans.
Yeah, maybe Kilcrease finds a rhythm against Buffalo's 95th ranked passing defense. I just don't know that much about Buffalo to understand it. How about you, Shane? With your East Coast vibe, what are you sensing here?
Similar to the Cajuns, I would feel a lot better about Troy if the goose was loose and they were going to go up there with the Crowder at quarterback. But without him, I'm not that confident in the offense to do it. The line looks pretty solid to me. I think it's got Buffalo favored by 6.5, 7 points, depending on where you shop. And I'm not confident in Troy either. Same thing I said about Louisiana. It's let's hope that Goose Crowder isn't out too long.
Yeah, in fact, I think he's having some kind of shoulder surgery or something, and yet they're kind of saying, "Oh, it's not that big a deal. He'll come back." I don't know what that means. I guess we'll just have to see. I think Troy's in a real pickle barrel right now, and I don't think Buffalo wants to let him out. Later on in the afternoon, 5 p.m., ESPN Plus, Arkansas State Red Wolves take on, for the very first time ever, guys, Kennesaw State Owls. It's on the Plus. The Red Wolves are a 6.5-point favorite in this game. And data. We don't have much data on the Kennesaw State Owls. They lose by an amusing 10-9 score against Wake Forest. They get blown out by the heartless Kurt Signetti in Indiana. And then they play something called Merrimack, and they have a pretty good game against that FCS opponent. So we really don't know just too much about Kennesaw State. Thibodeau, what do you think this game's going to do?
This is definitely the good bounce back game for Arkansas State. Kennesaw State's played several Sun Belt Conference teams in the past and been unable to really do much against them. In addition, I want to say this is the first year of a new head coach, so he's still getting his players, getting his program right. I think the Red Wolves get Butch Jones another win in weird year 6, 7, whatever it is for him.
Yeah, I think it was the first win for the Kennesaw State coach was against Merrimack. But I don't know much about Kennesaw State except they now play for CUSA after spending a long time in the Big South. I'm sure the Owls are going to look slower and smaller than the Red Wolves' last two opponents. Would you agree with that, Shane?
They won't look as good as the last two opponents. And I think we're going to see the Red Wolves take out a little frustration out of having those two losses to some P4 teams and really, really kind of letting one slip away. Maybe not even entirely their fault against Iowa State. I think they're going to come out strong. I think they're going to put a whooping on Kennesaw State and their makeshift soccer stadium. They rushed into football use when they decided they were going FBS, and
it's a multi-use stadium.
Yeah.
I will say this, it's always a loser's game to me, in my opinion, to blame the refs for a loss. That being said, there were some pretty questionable and badly timed calls called against Arkansas State that hurt them in their game against Iowa State. But that's fine. Either way, it was actually a fun and exciting game to watch.
Let me pause the clock, Jeremy. I've got a question for you.
Oh, sure.
Would you rather, if we're talking about maybe calls being called correctly, would you have rather had the refs get it right against Central Arkansas and Iowa State, or take it away how it went?
I'm not sure if I'm emotionally prepared to answer that question, honestly. But I will say this, that end zone must be haunted by the poltergeists of past sins for the Red Wolves, because that is the end zone where 2 touchdowns were taken away from Arkansas State by questionable calls in favor of Iowa State, happen in the same end zone as that UCA thing. So, yeah, there might be
What I'm asking you is, would you trade a loss to Central Arkansas for winning?
I understood your question.
It's an episode of really bad questions and answers.
It's like, you know what I feel like? You know, I was watching.
Answer at all.
It's like I was watching like the like on C-SPAN when they have like the FBI director up for like an internal review, and they have the senators grilling him, and they ask him a question, and he sort of just kind of goes off on a tangent and never really answers the question. That's what you're going to get from me on that question, Shane Metlin. A total redirect. Well, of course I'd want to beat Iowa State. I mean, sure, I'd trade a win over UCA for a win over Iowa State. I mean, come on. Yeah, there you go. There's your answer. You tortured it out of me. Fine, Shane.
You can start the clock again.
Okay, I'm gonna restart the clock. An hour later, at 6 o'clock, the Marshall Thundering Herd takes on Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders. It's kind of like a Sunbelt game in a way because the Blue Raiders used to be a Sunbelt team. It's at 6 p.m. ESPN Plus. The Herd, they also get that sort of, I guess we ought to give them 2.5 points, but do they deserve to be 2.5-point favorites? I don't know if they do, Shane Metlin.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where that's coming from. Vegas knows what they're doing, though, so
Okay.
I'll trust them. But yeah, I think this one could go either way. Like, neither team has been particularly impressive yet this year. I would tend to lean towards the home team, but yeah, maybe Marshall has got it figured out as they've come off a victory.
Yeah, you know, the Blue Raiders, they do have that win, their most recent game against Nevada. Nevada historically has been a pretty good team. They did lose their FCS game with Austin Peay, and that's embarrassing. Marshall is finally coming off a victory, getting Tony Gibson that first win, but it was against Eastern Kentucky. You know, they've still got two big losses. Dusty, I'll ask you the same question. Do they deserve to be 2.5-point favorites over the Blue Raiders?
Without a doubt. The Blue Raiders bad football. Wow. And this is a much needed win and an old Conference USA matchup, one of several that we have of old Conference USA matchups there. The other one being when Southern Miss goes to Louisiana Tech. I like the Herd to kind of get that winning streak going again and get the win over the Blue Horses. Go Herd.
Yeah, okay. All right. I Vegas likes the Herd, but you know what? I don't know. I need to see something from the Herd before I'm willing to give the Herd the benefit of the doubt. All right, one of two FCS games for the Sun Belt this week. The first one's the Maine Black Bears. They come and visit the Georgia Southern Eagles. 6 p.m. ESPN Plus. No odds are given. You know, in the movie Blazing Saddles, there's this song that Madeline Kahn sings about how she's really tired. And I get the feeling that song kind of applies to the Eagles, right? You know, they have the two West Coast games, even though they stayed on the West Coast. They come all the way back and have this grueling 41-34 win over Jackson State. You gotta know that Clay Helton and his guys are probably pretty tired right now, Shane Metlin.
Yeah, but they've been in their own beds for a while now. They ought to be recovering at this point. I don't know what to gather about Maine. Like, that they really gave Liberty fits. First week of the season. That ended up being like a 3-score game, like late, but it was in that game late. And then they've just been absolutely terrible, losing to Sacred Heart and Stonehill and like just looking really bad. Georgia Southern ought to be able to win this one probably fairly comfortably, but I don't know. I'm wondering if there's something about Maine where like maybe they get up for these types of games and we'll give them a little bit of a challenge.
Thibodeau, it sounds like to me what Shane is saying is that Georgia Southern should not sleep on the Black Bears. Agreed?
You never sleep on an FCS opponent because it might take you slipping that referee a couple $100 bills to make a pass interference call in the end zone or something like that to really right the ship.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I mean, it's a good program. I think that they are I think you just sabotaged my connection.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. We hear you. We don't see you, Tibbs. What happened to you?
It's the thought that counts. No, I think this game is one that Maine's going to play up for, right? Because they're wanting to show up and show off that they can compete with an FBS school. The Eagles are going to be in for a fight, but they have the power of the Magic Water on their side and Danny Reed. I like Georgia Southern to get the win here.
I have to agree. I don't have any confidence in Maine. All right, next game is our big Sunbelt on Sunbelt violence game. You know, pretty soon we're going to get a lot of these, but these are kind of few and far between in the first 4 weeks. We get Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. They take on South Alabama Jaguars. 6 p.m. ESPN Plus. The Jags are a massive 15.5 point favorite. You know whose name is not linked to the Virginia Tech job, Shane?
Would that be Tim Peck? Or
Tim Peck.
I wasn't sure if you're getting at that or like that Major Applewhite should be.
Maybe he should be, but Tim Beck's name is definitely not being associated with the Virginia Tech job right now. The Chants there are officially in trouble. They lose to East Carolina 38-0. That's a regional rival. The fan base probably didn't take that very well. Meanwhile, South Alabama was a little overmatched by number 24 Auburn, but I think Bishop Davenport is clearly the real deal behind center. Had a couple touchdowns. Kentrell Bullock, also an awesome running back. I expect them to run all day against the Chants. I'm going to throw it over to you, Shane. Are the Coastal Chanticleers cooked, and it's only week 4?
I'm afraid so. I think this is going to be. They're going to go to Mobile and get rolled. Like, I just don't see them really competing with South Alabama, who I think is decent and I think can put up some points. And it's hard to imagine Coastal all of a sudden getting it together enough to score and keep up with South Alabama. I think South Alabama covers, wins easily, enjoys getting off to a good start in conference play.
But Dusty, I know, because I've been with you there, man. I've been at your side. I've offered you the paternal pat. I've tried to comfort you. The Jags have broken your heart so many times. But do you trust them finally to beat the Chanticleers?
I don't trust them, but I think they win. I mean,
Oh.
the Jags had a great showing last week on the Plains when they were playing at Auburn. Lost by 16. I think that's a pretty respectable score and difference from a team that's definitely on the up and up there in the SEC. I just can't bring myself to pick the Jags. I think they win the game, but the words won't come out, Jeremy, to say I picked the Jags.
Okay, we won't make you say it. We won't make you say it. We'll just try to parse from your words what you mean there. I will say this about Tad Hudson for Coastal Carolina, 19 for 39 with 2 picks against the Pirates. And the run game produced all of 67 yards. I don't know what the Chanticleers are doing. I miss the old Chanticleers. They get fried by the Jag. Another cat-related game, Georgia State Panthers. This is the revenge game. This is the rematch of the century. Georgia State Panthers taking on number 20 Vanderbilt Commodores. 6:30 p.m. on ESPNU national audience. The Panthers, 26.5 point underdog. That's fine. We remember the Panthers beating the Commodores last year in Atlanta. It was pure Sunbelt entropy. And now the Commodores, having just, upset South Carolina, now they get this chance for their revenge. Do they even care about revenge? I don't know. Shane Metlin, do you see any good stuff coming out of this game for the Panthers?
I think it's going to be a tough day for our Georgia State friends. Like you said, it's revenge. This is a pretty decent Vanderbilt team that has some talent. They've got the talented quarterback, Diego Pava. And, I think they're going to, I'm sure they've heard enough about it here during the week that they are not going to overlook Georgia State. If if the Panthers have any hope, it's that TJ Finley has a breakout game now that he's maybe settling in and getting comfortable there in Atlanta. If he has a huge game, limits the interceptions, maybe they have a chance, but I don't see them like hanging with this particular Vanderbilt team in Nashville this time around.
Yeah, part of the good news is Ted Hurst did look like Ted Hurst in their game against Murray State. 172 receiving yards and a couple scores. TJ Finley still needs to become the old TJ Finley. He's just not there yet. In fact, backup quarterback Cameron Brown looked a lot better. I don't know if we're going to start seeing more of Cameron Brown. Dusty Thibodeau, what do you see coming out of this game?
We might as well strap in and get ready for another year of Diego, as he won his court appeal. That he will have his 7th year, and I'm sure he'll sue to get his 8th, 9th, and 10th year. But his mom is going on a date with Theo Vaughn, as we heard about so many times this week on the broadcast. Yeah, Vandy rolls. Mom's happy, son's happy, Theo Vaughn's happy.
Wow, did not peg you for a guy who would know so much about pop culture as you have right there. That was pretty good. Here's another quasi Sun Belt as our dog weighs in. I enjoyed that. Southern Miss Golden Eagles taking on future Sun Belt foe Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. 6:30 p.m. ESPN Plus. The Golden Eagles are just a 3.5 point, or no, actually are a 3.5 point underdog. My bad. Even though they've looked really good their last 2 games, including beating Appalachian State in Hattiesburg. Now they've got the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are 2-0. The Bulldogs are 2-1 right now. One of those wins comes at the expense of New Mexico State, a former Sun Belt Conference member. I'll throw this at you, Thibodeau. Do the Golden Eagles keep this thing rolling?
Probably not, because I think we saw the Eagles struggle every time they've played a good, solid defense, i.e. the Mississippi State defense. And that was the biggest takeaway that a lot of fans had when Louisiana Tech went to LSU, was that Bulldog defense was legit and was what was going to win them some ball games. And I think that's what it does this week, is it wins them a close ball game in Ruston.
Yeah, Bulldogs always seem to be that kind of team that always has like enormous linebackers. I don't know where they find them. Somewhere out in the deep denizens of Louisiana, they must grow enormous linebackers for the Bulldogs to take. Jay, do you have any feelings on this game?
Yeah, I want to believe that the Sun Belt is going to go in and just dominate all these Conference USA teams that they play. And, I feel like Georgia Southern beating Jacksonville State is kind of like a good purveyor of that. That's not the right word, but that's the barometer of that. It's if Jacksonville State is one of the better teams in that conference, and we've been disappointed in Georgia Southern, and that shows us that the Sun Belt's just that much better. This particular matchup, though, Louisiana Tech looks like a team that could win Conference USA right now. Get a little parting gift before they come join us over here in the Sun Belt. I think on the road, this one might be tough for Southern Miss, even though I'm pretty high on the Eagles at this point. It's going to be a hard-fought game, but I think it might be one that the Techsters go ahead and pull out.
Okay. You know what? I'm kind of feeling I have a better feeling than you two. I feel like Braylon Braxton has really got, like a good sense of what this team is about. He seems to be finding his wide receivers. He seems to be doing pretty well. Saturday, Jamon Tapp had 3 sacks against Appalachian State, which 3 sacks in a game is pretty good. So I feel like the defense might be rolling pretty well. I don't know. I think the Golden Eagles continue to unleash the entropy. I feel good about it, guys. I don't know if I put money on it, but I'm feeling good about that. Second FCS game of the week. The Nichols Colonels, they take on the Texas State. 7 p.m. ESPN Plus, no odds given. Since upending Incarnate Word in week 1, the Colonels have dropped games against Troy and West Georgia, so maybe the magic dust has worn off a little bit on the Nichols season. Meanwhile, Texas State recovering from that business loss or business-like loss to Arizona State, but GJ Kenny still has plenty of cards to play. Tibbs, you know Nichols and Texas State as well as anybody. Do you see anything interesting coming out of this game?
No, I think you were right. I think that Nichols, that was kind of their big game when they beat Incarnate Word. They had all season to prepare for it, and now that things are on film, they're not really as much of a surprise anymore. I think Texas State knows that they need to get these wins because they're going to have to target on them, right? Because they're leaving the league. Everyone's going to want their one last shot at Texas State. So they got to get the wins where they can to try to get to their 7 wins once again this season and go into the postseason to steal a bowl slot from a Sun Belt team.
Oh, okay. All right. Hey, do you agree with that, Shane? Does that seem like a pretty good analysis?
Yeah, I mean, I think Texas State's going to win, and it's never going to be like particularly threatened. But I also don't know if this is going to be one of those impressive 50-point blowouts. I feel like they're going to be up by 17 like, the entire game. Kind of, it's sandwiched in between there, where they, were up for Arizona State. That was their shot at a 4-win, and then they start conference play next against Arkansas State. So it's just kind of there. I don't know we're going to get Texas State's best showing, but I think it's going to be enough to win without truly being a threat.
Last game of the night. It's not until 8 p.m. You can sit down, you can put on your pajamas, snuggle up in the couch, make some popcorn, and go to bed with the Sun Belt. The ULM Warhawks, they take on the UTEP Miners, University of Texas El Paso, in case you want to know what that means. 8 p.m., ESPN+. The Warhawks are 3.5-point underdog in this game. The Miners didn't perform poorly against media darling Texas last week. They fell 27-10. Got another interception on Arch Manning. So Arch Manning can always remember that for the rest of his life. The Warhawks are sort of in trauma counseling after getting assaulted 73-0 by Alabama. But Tibbs, this is the game that you kind of kept pointing to all preseason long. You're like, you're not going to learn much about St. Frank's. You're not going to learn much from Alabama. But this is the game where you might learn something about the Warhawks when they play the Miners.
No doubt. Had a lot of injuries that we haven't seen play yet. Burkhalter, Trujillo at the receiving position. Max Larson hasn't made his debut kicking this year. He should be back this week. So this is really, even though it's week 4 and we're already a fourth of the way through the season, scary to say that, this is really the debut of the Warhawks. And so this is where we'll start to kind of see, what do we have? What do we look like? What are we going to be like? They go, though, against a good UTEP team that, as you said, I thought that the defense of UTEP was pretty good against Texas last week. I really like their front 7 that they have. They have a former 5-star in Malachi Nelson at the quarterback position. He's finally starting to learn how to play college football, knowing that he's had 2 previous stops without any snaps. It could be a dangerous game, and I really like the Warhawks to kind of squeak this one out. I don't know if they necessarily cover that 3.5, and that's how close I think it'll be. But I think the Warhawks come home happy out of the desert.
Shane, an interesting statistic, at least interesting to me, that came out of that 73-0 victory Alabama had over the Warhawks was the Warhawks starting quarterback Aiden Armenta completed 8 of 14 passes for just 28 yards. That's 2 yards per completion. I know it's against Bama, but that's not really very good, Shane. Should we worry about that passing game? I know Tibbs talked about a lot of wide receivers being out, so you got a lot of weapons that weren't available to Armenta. But they're just, obviously, they're going to need Armenta to do something more with the passing game to win this game against UTEP.
Yeah, and more than that, but I don't know. I think we're just going to see ULM grind out some victories here. And UTEP's probably a good place to go do that. Scenery is great at the Sun Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, let people, if you want to watch something exciting, look out into the mountains over the Sun Bowl. If you want to see ULM grind out a boring victory against a middle of the road Conference USA team, keep your eyes in the stadium, because I think that's what's going to happen down there.
There's an old short story from Arthur Conan Doyle where Sherlock Holmes states, data, 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 I cannot make bricks without clay. And that's what we have with the Warhawks. We don't really have a lot of data right now. They get the blowout, but they also beat the FCS team and shut them out. But we really don't know anything about them. We're going to learn a lot about UTEP starting at 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus when we're all watching this on the couch. Guys, before we close out second and short, we have to let everyone know that ODU, the weirdest team in the Sun Belt, will not be playing this week, nor will Appalachian State, probably recovering from their loss against Southern Miss. And that's it, guys. That's the end of second and short. Congratulations. Another second and short completed. Good work. You guys are all-stars. You're rock stars. You're the best.
And now for the other great part that Shane loves, because he gets paid to plug the DNRonline.com, where all of his work is published, and his AP poll.
Ooh.
Oh, wait, you said you weren't an AP voter.
Not in football.
No, okay.
Yeah, they took it away from you after you put Notre Dame number 1, right?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. After the controversies, I don't want to be involved in the football poll.
No, stay away.
Plugs, promos, parting shots. Jeremy, tell us what you have.
Just a small thing, something that I'm going to be paraphrasing. I always say it when we slip away from the Sun Belt, because that's where that's our wheelhouse, that's our bread and butter. But I did see a quote from University of Arkansas athletic director Hunter Yurachek. He was talking to a group of sports people. And he was saying, I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, but what he's saying is that Arkansas is not set up to win, meaning that their NIL collective strategies, their money collecting strategies in general, just aren't enough for them to compete, and they're going to have to find another way to make that money. And I think a lot of schools are suddenly beginning to dawn on them that the system that's set up now is really designed to benefit maybe 10 programs, 10 of the very richest programs, 10 of the richest programs whose people that are affiliated with them, their boosters, can afford to just pump in millions and millions and millions of dollars into the program. When you got Arch Manning, a very mediocre quarterback for Texas, he's making $10 million a year just on NIL, and you expect other teams to be able to do this? I mean, you look at the state of Arkansas, I've been told, a wealthy state with a lot of poor people in it. Arkansas will never, ever, ever be able to compete for a title anywhere if this structure remains. I was watching Wake Forest and North Carolina State the other day. I just happened to walk in on that. And quite frankly, it made me sad that these teams were playing. And I was like, these guys will never taste a playoff. They're in the system, sure, they're Power 4, but they're just dying like the rest of us. It's just 10 teams out there that are really benefiting from the system, and we've got to find a way to get out of it, or we're just going to have to get used to that 10-team system. And that's my parting shot.
Shane, what do you have?
I'll build off of that a little bit too. In that it's not just, the 10 teams, 15, however many that have the money and the boosters to go out and get whatever players and coaches they want. It's that this whole system is also bound to TV ratings when there's really only about 10 teams that make any difference in TV ratings.
Yeah.
In-state, Notre Dame, Colorado with Dion, not without Dion, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. There's only a handful of teams that you could put them in any TV time slot, and they're going to get the big ratings. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what teams you have playing on ESPNU at 3:30, it's going to get the same terrible rating, no matter who you put there. Whoever you put on ESPN2 at 1 o'clock or 9 o'clock p.m. or whenever your time slots are, the ratings don't change that much week to week, regardless of what teams are. Not enough to make a huge difference in advertising money, but we have like made this system where like a handful of teams are getting all this money for their conferences, to the point that like the Big Ten and the SEC have complete control over everything because of a few teams. And it just makes absolutely no sense that this is what's really determining and everything. In the ACC, they're going to hand out money based on like your TV ratings, like what you're generating.
Yeah.
And like the conference and ESPN to a degree is deciding then who gets that money, because they know, hey, if we put you on regular ESPN at noon, you're going to get such and such rating. It doesn't matter who you are. Regular ESPN is going to do better than ESPNU. And like ESPN now is deciding who's going to get that money from the ACC. And like, it's just such a crazy system that it's all based on TV, when like people want to watch college football and they'll watch who they want to watch. It just is crazy to me that like we're basing it so much on ratings that don't change regardless of the situation.
Yeah, in a perfect world, wouldn't this all be settled on the gridiron? Wouldn't it be all about who's coaching better, who's recruiting better, who's playing the game better? That's not what it is anymore. It's just about who has the most money, and that's just dispiriting. That's like watching soccer and it coming up to a tie. There's no satisfaction to be had.
Sure, I'll go now.
Thanks.
An oldie but a goodie. Tales from Florida Man.
Oh.
When in May 2015, Jeff Waters of Jacksonville, Florida, made the headlines when he attempted to cash a check at a Bank of America that was drawn on a now defunct U.S. Bank of Idaho from the 1990s, and it was made out to cash.
Oh.
He had bought it from a homeless man named Tito for $100, who assured him the check was good and that he could fill it in for whatever amount that he wanted.
Wow.
How much amount did he fill it in for there, Jeremy?
I'm going to say 30 million.
Shane?
I don't know. We'll say 100 million.
368 million. And the only reason that the teller that it was handed to at the Bank of America drew any kind of questions was because the check was not signed.
That's it?
Florida Man wins again. Unless you're Billy Napier.
It sounds like somebody kind of orchestrated a good way to fill up their NIL.